Okay, ready to have some fun? Going to take you back to 1954. You need to get on my time machine with me. You know, this thing has got a bad clutch, but it gets us back to the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. And I guarantee you, you're going to love these stories because they're all true. There's 70 of them, and they're all true. So those of you that have a grandmother, grandfather, husband, wife that are close to this age or experience some of these things, get them to watch this. They did these things. They did them. They just did them in a different time, different place, little different way. Okay, are you on the time machine? Come on, there's a few of you jumping on. Let's go. We're going to have a little fun now. We're going back to 1954. Golfing blackbirds. 1954, one warm summer day, my brother Snap and I were underneath a cherry tree in our backyard, a big cherry tree just full of cherries. And we were eating cherries, and out of the back door came my mother. By the way, her nickname is Lovey. We call her Mom, we call her Lovey. She came back and she said, "Boys, I need your help." And we said, "What can we do, Mom?" She said, "Boys, those birds are eating all of my cherries, are eating all my cherry pie, my jams, everything. If they eat up all these cherries, I won't be able to make all of these pies and things that I've promised the family and delivered for years and years. Will you please help me get rid of these birds out of the tree?" And we said, "Well, Mom, we could scare them out of there and they'll be back in a minute. All of them. There's got to be 100 of them in there right now." She says, "Oh my gosh, you've got to help me." And I said to her, I said, "Well, Mom, the only way that we're going to do it is we've got to get our BB guns and we got to shoot them." She said, "Oh, I hate to hear you say that." But she said, "Do what you have to do, but please don't tell your father I said it was okay to use your BB guns. Do you promise?" "Yes, Mom, we promise." "Okay, please, just take care of them. They're just eating them by the gallons up there." "Okay, Mom, we'll take care of it. Hey, Mom, before you leave, by the way, what do we do with all the dead birds when we're done?" And she said, "Well, you're smart boys. What have you been doing with them the last 2 summers? You've been shooting birds around here all for the last 2 summers." And he said, "Mom, now listen, we're not the only ones with BB guns. Every kid 7 or 8 years old has got a BB gun. They're all shooting birds." She said, "Well, you're smart boys. Just figure it out and just get rid of them." So we said, "Okay." As a matter of fact, I think that's the only time in my childhood when anybody ever said to me, "You're smart." So anyway, Mom left. Me and Snap stood there to figure it out. And we figured one of us would go up in the tree, shoot those thieving blackbirds, and the other one would be down below, collect those birds, and then take them and get rid of them. And we knew there were just two places to get rid of them. They're just to the east of the house was a great big open area called the jungle, which was a wide open space with trees all around it. We could put them all in the jungle, or we have a neighbor, Mr. and Mrs. Clay, who just lived to the north of us. There was a big 5 foot bush that separated our yard and went all the way from his yard lot line to our lot line. We could either uh, put him in the jungle or we could get him into Mr. Clay's backyard. He wouldn't know where they came from. God, were we stupid. I want you to know as I tell these stories, I'm going to be laughing with you and I'm going to be crying with you because I was there in every one of them. And it's just amazing some of the thought process. So anyway, I told Snap, I said, "Okay, Snap, I'm going to go up in the tree. I got my BB gun." I said, "You going to get a gunny sack or something to put him in?" He said, "No." He said, "That takes too long." He said, "I'm going to get Uncle Cliff's 9 iron, and I'm just going to, when they come down, I'm just going to golf them over the hedge into Mr. Clay's backyard." And I said, "Well, that's a great idea. He wouldn't have a clue where they came from, and besides, some of them are going to fall into the hedge anyway." So we did it. I climbed the tree. Those birds were all over the place. Matter of fact, they'd come sit about 6 inches from my BB gun barrel. Boom, I'd shoot them. Down they'd fall. Snap would measure them with that 9 iron, and he would golf them over the hedge into Mr. Clay's backyard. Oh my gosh, were we having fun, and were we being successful? We were saving Mom's pies and jellies and jams. Oh my gosh, we had about 15 or 20 of them down, and Snap had golfed that many over the hedge into Mr. Clay's yard. We were enjoying it. We were talking a little bit, and we were laughing. Then, oops, all of a sudden, from around the hedge came Mr. Clay, and he had both arms lifted, and in both hands he had two dead birds. And he came stomping over towards us. I jumped down from the tree. I was scared. Snap was scared. I jumped on, stood right beside Snap. That's what we always did. I don't know if we protected each other or whatever, but we always did that, stood side by side. And Mr. Clay came up and he looked at us and he said, "Are these your birds?" And I said, "Yes, yes, they are, Mr. Clay." And he said, "Well, if these are your birds, how in the hell did they get in my yard?" And then we told him the story about Mom and the apple and the cherry pies and all the gels and jams and everything. And then he said, "Okay, okay, let me understand this. John, you climbed the tree because your mother gave you permission to shoot him, and you climbed the tree and you shot him. And they fell down to the ground. And then Snap, you're down here, and then you picked up these birds and you took them and you threw them into my backyard." And Snap said, "No, no, Mr. Clay, no, that isn't what happened." And he said, "Well, then how in the hell did they get in my yard if you didn't throw them there?" And Snap looked at him and he said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Clay, but what I did when John would shoot him, they'd fall to the ground. I'd take Uncle Cliffy's 9-iron and I would golf them over the hedge into your backyard." And he looked at us and he said, "You would golf them into my backyard?" And then Snap said, "Yes, Mr. Clay, but from now on, I'm going to golf them. I'm going to golf them into the jungle." Everybody that lived in our neighborhood knew what the jungle was. He said, "You're going to golf them into the jungle." And he raised those birds up again and he took another step close to us. He was almost stepping on our shoes. He was so close. And he looked at us and he said, "You two are the two damnedest little shits that God ever created." And he raised them high and he dropped them right at our feet. And then he turned and he started walking home. And we noticed as he was walking away that his shoulders were shaking, and they were shaking hard. We knew that meant only one of two things. Either he felt really bad that we were golfing blackbirds into his yard, and he felt bad and he was crying. And we had hoped that he wasn't crying. The other scenario was if he wasn't crying, he was laughing. And if he was laughing, me and Snap couldn't figure out what was so funny. What was so funny? Were we idiots or what? Golfing blackbirds.